everyone. I'm Angela.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dina.
Hi, I'm Monique.
And we are the philosophers of Acropolis, Boston. And in this video, this is video 3 of our Peace and Justice series, where we talk about the philosophy behind bringing more peace to the world, pulling from modern research and ancient wisdom. Now, why this series? We know that creating sustainable change requires that we cultivate the values, peace, and justice within in order to see that change in the world. And today we're going to be talking about someone who exemplified those qualities in spades, the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or RBG. RBG was a force to be reckoned with. She achieved the height of her profession at a time when it was unheard of for women to be in positions as high as she had risen to. But she proved herself to be a beacon for equality and justice throughout her life. And the world is better for her being in it. But aside from her career, she was just a plain old wonderful human being whose example can teach us a lot about what it means to bring peace and justice to the world in our own unique ways. And all of us here on the panel have seen the movie On the Basis of Sex and have been reading about her life. And with that, I'd like to ask the group to discuss what they found inspiring about RBG's life and the ways that we can look to her example. So we'll start with first question. What virtues did RBG live that inspired you? How did she practice those virtues?
For me, her perseverance is visible many times throughout her life. For example, in one of the scenes of the movie On the Basis of Sex, the professor is asking if someone have any idea about a case that he's presenting. And she has her hand asking her permission to talk. And he just ignored her for a few minutes. And until she has this chance to expose her point of view, she kept just focused with her hand up, just waiting her time. And when her time is up to talk, she really doesn't show any other feelings towards that situation, which could be anger or shame or something like this. She really just kept her focus on explaining the flaws about the case, which reminds me of one of her quotes: "Fear and doubt won't be holding me back." So this spoke to me in a powerful way.
Amazing. No, you're right. This scene in the movie is just so indicative of really, the example she had throughout her life, which is that she faces all of these boundaries and these minor, or not even minor, like major setbacks because of who she was, whether it was because she was a woman, she was Jewish, or mother, but she didn't let any of those things hold her back, that she kept her focus and her determination through those things. But then also, you're right, she never, looked at it as I should be ashamed of this, or, I'm going to hold on to the emotion that elicited. She maintained her focus on that goal and kept going. And you mentioned the fact that fear and doubt wouldn't be holding her back, that quote that she mentions. And before we were talking about the video, or before we started just talking about this today, Bina, I remember you mentioning that this was something that spoke to you also, that idea that fear and doubt wasn't going to be holding her back. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
So thanks, Angela. Yeah, fear and doubt, two important concepts, right, that most people struggle with, no matter the time, the place, or the situation. I guess for me, her sense of independence and her self-esteem resonate the most. Those are two important virtues. And also the fact that she's able to separate her politics from the person or the problem at hand. RBG, she described herself as a flaming feminist litigator, but you and I both know that she was much more than that, right? She was a daughter, she was a sister, she was a mother, a wife, and for a short time, she was also a nurse to her husband, Marty, as well as being a brilliant, accomplished, and some would say difficult lawyer. like many of us, she's had the challenges and tragedies in life. But these setbacks, weren't going to set her back. It's just something that Monique spoke to. I mean, early on, her sister died of meningitis, and her mother, who she absolutely adored, was instrumental in the trajectory that RBG took in her life. Unfortunately, passed away before her graduation, and RBG was just 17 years old. But she went to her graduation and not telling people the circumstances of what had just happened. Probably echoing what her mother had taught her, which was not to show emotion. But I cannot even begin to imagine what she was going through. But probably she was modeling herself on some of her mum's teachings. And her mum obviously was a huge influence to her, and taught her that she needed to be very independent. And we see this when RBG went to Sweden to learn about the Swedish judicial system. Here she learned about herself, and she realized that she could do quite well on her own. And recalling the fact that her mother had said to her that, even if you marry Prince Charming, you have to fend for yourself and be fiercely independent. Now, this, you recall, was the 1950s, so something that would have been an anathema to most families.
Yes, no, you're right. That idea that no matter what setback she encountered in life, she wasn't going to let the fear that maybe she couldn't show up to that challenge or doubt in herself ever enter her mind. And that I loved that you brought up that example of her research that she did in Sweden, because this was something also unheard of at the time, that she would, take that time from her family to go and do this work that was so essential really to one of the virtues she was trying to exemplify in her life, which is, how can we have a more just world? And let's look at ways that other people have tried to exemplify that. And she didn't let any of these perceived setbacks, whether from herself or society, put that doubt in her mind that she could do something like that. So that was great. Thank you. And thank you both for these wonderful virtues. And with that, we'll actually go to the second question. How can we take the virtues Ruth Bader Ginsburg exemplified and use those to create change today in our own daily lives? So Bina, how about we start with you first? What sort of ways do you see this coming out in your daily life?
Yeah, great question, Angela. So what I found charming, or rather disarming, about RBG, right, was that she was able to maintain friendships and respect despite having significant ideological differences. I mean, for example, with Justice Scalia, who was notoriously conservative and quite vociferously expressed those views in his decisions, but yet in real life was really close to RBG, who was one of the most progressive Supreme Court judges. When questioned about how she'd maintained this friendship, her response was very simple. She said, I disagreed with most of what he said, but I loved the way he said it. And Scalia, in his own way, was quite complimentary about Ginsberg. He said, what's not to like, except for her views on law? So I think her ability to see through these conflicting opinions and see Scalia's intellect and enjoy the person for who he was is to her credit. And I don't know if you've seen the opera by Derek Wang, there is actually a song in there which says, we are different, but we are one. And I think that's something that I try and take through in my day-to-day interactions with people.
Amazing. No, and you bring up such a great point, that idea that we need to start to see to what unites us and the humanity we all share beyond these I mean, ultimately, it's interesting, right? Because even though they're sitting on the Supreme Court together, they, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Scalia, didn't necessarily see these differences in opinion or in their politics as being total barriers to coming together. And there was a quote from actually the notorious RBG book. I'm not sure if actually RBG was the one that said it, that the two of them, loved and appreciated the opera, but they also loved and appreciated the US Constitution and the institution on which they served. And that they were able to see beyond all of their differences in order to serve that is so telling of how we can take that example on to make the change that we want to see, to just bridge some of those divides that we've had collectively together. Because at the end of the day, if we're serving something greater, if we're, even just honoring the human being within all of us, that is ultimately what's going to bring about the best solutions that we need to the problems we face today. So Monique, tell us, how do you see this, or RBG's virtues or virtues that spoke to you playing out in our daily life?
Well, sometimes we think that to make a difference in the world or to make a difference in another people's life, we need to make grandiose gestures. And when in fact, you just need to recognize your impact in another people's life, Sometimes just extending this kindness to others outside of our homes, our small universe, through our friends, and just extending to others that you don't know. Just an example, while you're driving, sometimes you can just stop to someone that is trying to cross. On a daily basis, if you would just take these little opportunities to build step by step a better way to see the world and to treat the next person, I think that this is a nice way to just make a difference day by day, paying attention in small details, just the way we treat each other in our own daily life. I believe that is really, it's small, but it makes time by time, it will make a huge difference in how we behave ourselves.
You're so right. That idea of, it's not to not necessarily discount the small impact that we have on people we interact with day to day, and to see the momentum that builds, because it does make a difference in the long run when we consistently show up to our own humanity and recognize that in other people. And it, in its own small way, brings that out in others when we can treat people with the respect and the dignity that we know we deserve and that all human beings deserve. And if we can really commit to bringing that viewpoint, that vantage point into our day-to-day lives, that's how we change the world, just that step-by-step process. And thank you. And thank you to our panel members. This has been a wonderful discussion, and especially for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy, that we can take her virtues, her examples, but also just, know that we ourselves have so much to give, that we have so much opportunity in our day-to-day lives to just show up for the values that we ourselves are trying to bring into the world more and more each day. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.